Hello, people. Welcome to another edition of A Dose of Drew. And here on Friday Night Knives, we have another knife review. This is the Bestech Lito. This is in the olive wood and black stonewashed version, which is actually quite nice. Looks really cool. As you can see, it is not the biggest knife. But let us get into it because this has some interesting bits that may not be visible right off. So with the standard measurements here, it's just under. It's about 6 3/4 inches with just under 3 inches, about 2 7/8 of blade tip to scale, about 2 3/4, 2 7/8, and tip to tail, about 6 3/4. So it's a fairly small little knife. But that's just neither here nor there. Again, relatively small. Let's get some weight on this bad boy here. It's not the lightest knife either, but it's not exactly all that heavy. It's under 3 ounces. It's small, but still, that's pretty robust for this size. And there's not a lot of milling or other weight reduction in the handle, and it is titanium. So that's actually not a bad thing all around. Let's get some of this. Some of the blade stock. Not too thin, not too thick. Let's see if I can't get. So it's just over, 1,000 thousandths, or 100 thousandths, I should say. So it's about 1/10 of an inch, 0.1. If we go to the infamous millimeter, that's going to be about 2.65. That sounds about right. All right, behind the edge. This is where we really get something going here. I'll do it up where it is the thinnest. That's right at there. 12 thousandths. If you guys can read that. 12 thousandths behind the edge. Extremely thin behind the edge, even for a small knife like this. Gives it really nice slicing power. And that is, let me see if I can get it in focus. You can see that right there. M390. So you're going to get not only good slicing, but fairly decent edge retention. Bestech's usually pretty good about that. And it has this really cool, I don't know if that's anodization on there, but it looks like it's an anodized titanium ring around the pivot that's got some cool color changes to it. Really nice in that sense. Let's get some of the comparative measurements out of the way. First, this is how it looks compared to the Paramilitary 2. As you can see, it is quite small. And while it is small, there's a fair amount of hand space there. It's not tons, but there is a fair amount. Compared to the Paramilitary 2, which fits large hands, that's pretty good for how small it is. And of course, the Para 3, lightweight in this case. You can see it's not that much different in size. It has a similar hand space to the Para 3 lightweight. And that's pretty nice to deal with right there. All right, coming up to some others. As we know, it is just a blur. Not too bad. Again, hand space. That beak kind of gives it, but if you consider this back spot as a finger, we'll get to more in that in a minute, it's still pretty close. And of course, not just any leak, but a random leak. Look at it this way, the hand space is, again, fairly close. But it's smaller than all these, which is something to really think about. It's relatively thick. I probably should have kept... I'll bring out the Paramilitary 2. It's actually pretty thick. So you're talking about, let me see if I can get this where you can see it. I gotta remember to keep looking at this so you guys can see this stuff. It's about as thick as a Paramilitary 2, which is fair if you compare it to something like the stainless steel leak right here, where it's much, much thicker in the hand. Even though it's relatively small, that thickness definitely helps. It helps in so many different ways. But let's take a look at some others. Here it is, next to the Benchmade Bug Out. As you can see, again, hand space is at a premium. All right, and the Civivi Elementum. Very, very well known. Again, hand space is at a premium, but not that far off. Again, we'll get back to that here as we go through the rest of the review. But And here it is next to my Wiener. As you can see, despite the cold, my Wiener is both larger, thicker, better looking, and more interesting. I actually don't know if it's thicker. Yeah, see, it's thicker, just by a little bit. That's important to note. We'll just leave it right there. All right. On to the damn nice categories: design, aesthetics, mechanics, noteworthy points, intended purpose, cost to value ratio, and expectations, and if we can get damn nicer, any requests. All right, so the design is actually really, really cool. There's a certain primality to this knife where you can see just when you hold it that it is something similar to what many old knives or like stone knives. It really kind of gets that vibe, which is cool. There is a little bit of the blade itself gives you a large flat area right there that corresponds to the choil. While the choil isn't deep, that wide space actually gives you a wonderful pinch grip, right? Your finger kind of rolls. It doesn't go, you don't want to be like jabbing too hard or coming to a quick stop because your finger can roll up onto the edge. But that flat space when you're in a pinch grip, and especially with these really wide and properly placed thumb studs, gives you a place to rest your fingers. And the pinch grip works really well at keeping your 3 fingers on here. If you go into the saber grip, this being the smaller knife, this is about a 3-finger knife, even for me. It's almost 4, but the pinky just kind of sits back on that slope, and it does a very good job there of providing sort of not only that support, but bracing with this acute of a tip, and the fact that it is a very piercing oriented sort of blade style, which is not bad. Got a nice swedge, all sorts of stuff. It really helps when it comes there, or when it comes to the comes there. That really just said that. When it comes to the saber grip, and there's jimping up there that really even allows a full thumb to get there, but it really is a 3-finger knife. Same thing on the reverse grip. You got your pointer finger can go up there, and the thumb. This gives you a lot of good space. It hides in the hand fully, and that gives you the reverse grip. It really does that well. I really like the contrast of the olive wood on the black, and I really love what a lot of manufacturers have been doing, where they're color matching the screws and hardware to the scales and the rest of the knife. To me, there's something to be said about the industrial look of silver screws and everything screwed, and the big. I am not the biggest fan of it. I'm not saying that it's bad. It's just not the biggest thing. It's just not that cool to me. Something to give an idea is like this. For those who don't know, this is a Mallory design, the Tylos. If the screws in the carbon fiber were black, it would be a much cleaner design instead of these little pops going in. I care less about a hole where the clip could go than I do about the screws that kind of pop out. Again, the silver is nice, and it may cost a little bit more or anything, but this change over to that, not all, but a lot of manufacturers have been doing, where they're starting to color match the hardware and the clips and make them matte. I think probably let's see if I have it around here. I may not have it out. But the Mordex that I had recently done a review on, that is another knife that they have the matte, so it's not shiny silver screws and all that sort of stuff. I really like that on the design. It lends to the aesthetics. It's very good. It's got washers, or not washers. It's got, let me make sure I'm saying that right. Yeah, it's got bearings in the pivot. Very, very good action. I think the aesthetics of it are really cool. It fits up nice inside. It could have a slightly, longer or taller blade and still fit nicely within its silhouette. But that angle, that downward angle it gives is really actually nice for using this knife. It's a really good EDC design, and especially if you have a lot of tasks you do that require piercing. That acute tip really does well and gets into small areas, right? The mechanics of it, very good, linear, smooth. There's no coughing, hiccuping, or anything like that. There's just these nice little, it's held in place just barely enough by friction that it's not going to, guillotine your fingers, but it takes almost nothing to get it to break. So that's tuned very nicely, quite honestly, for that opening on the mechanics. It also locks into place, has this nice thick back spacer. Again, lots of flat surfaces where your fingers go that don't pop up. And if you look real close, you can see that there's this sort of lip right there that the blade fills, which is a nice little detail, and it keeps this nice clean line that goes. I like the clean lines of it, and I think this lighter colored inlay is quite nice. To me, this is a pretty knife, right? I like the aesthetics of this quite a bit. Quite honestly, more than I like the functionality of it. The looks of it are it's a little bit too small for most of my EDC tasks, and for its size, in fact, just to give you an idea here, for its size, I mean, I honestly can carry something lighter and different and all that stuff. That's very similar size. It doesn't have quite as much blade, but hand space and everything is fairly similar to the Dragonfly 2, as well as some other smaller knives. So it's got some pretty solid competition when it comes to its size. But the look, the details, I like Bestech knives. They don't always produce all the designs that I would like to buy, but I'm never afraid to buy a Bestech knife. I think they do quite a good job, quite honestly, as far as doing it. I have quite a few Bestech knives that I like a lot. And this is an Ostapel design, which is, for those who don't know, he is a very well-known designer, does lots of great stuff. Not always as, at risk of saying, not always quite as tame as this one, but always very well designed. Some of these lines on this thing, just coming, the way that line of that inlay comes down right to the blade is beautiful. Very appealing lines on this design. I can't, the arc here echoes the inlay. It's just a very nice design. It kind of echoes all sorts of stuff. It's really nice how the lines on this knife echo other parts of it, as well as give you an idea of what to do with it. I think that's fantastic. And that's really one of the things, again, on the noteworthy points. It's an Ostapel design. It's M390 in a relatively small package. It has really good slicing capabilities. Let me get that right out the gate, out the box. I mean, and the tip is just, I mean, that's out the box. That thinness behind the edge has a really good factory edge, and the overall sliciness of that high flat grind is actually kind of more of a slicer grind. As it goes from the high, it starts to get, but it's also got a lot of a distal taper to the blade. It narrows quite a bit to a very acute tip. M390 is not the toughest steel, but this isn't designed to do tough work. This is designed to do, well, the stuff that EDC. I find that as its intended purpose is definitely a classy EDC blade, and as such, it is a package piercer, especially that piercing tip. That thing will poke holes in most anything you stab it at. You poke it at. It is a shrink wrap slicer, or the bubble wrap, where you get around it, and being able to get way up on it, even in a solid grip or a pinch grip where you can control that tip, gives you a lot of space to go around that thick plastic and those hard plastic clamshells and stuff like this. Fantastic opener. I prefer this. I prefer knives over scissors when it comes to that stuff, just because I've seen a lot of scissors tend to split on the plastic instead of cutting straight through. It tends to bend it over, whereas a knife just hacks through it. Being able to control it as it moves down those long lines and gets that heavy plastic is actually pretty impressive. I definitely like this a lot, and that's, you know, that's kind of cool. It's got EDC. Its intended purpose is EDC, and it's there. The M390, even in the non-coated, gives you great corrosion resistance, great edge retention. Not so much in the toughness, but it's not that far. It's for its toughness, it does pretty good. It's got a fairly decent balance. Some things could be tougher. And for those who wonder, by toughness, I mean edge stability, resistance to chipping, and all that sort of stuff. Basically, its ability to spring back to its original state after forces have been applied laterally or anything. Basically, after forces have been applied to it, it resists that. So there's that kind of thing. It is also a cardboard carver. That high flat grind really just rips through with that thinness behind the edge. It just destroys cardboard. It really does, even for such a small. It does mean that you have to keep the knife in your cutting path. You can't just arc through because there's not a long blade for a lot of forgiveness and where you aim your path. But for those who are careful and have the skills, it is rewarding. And it is, of course, an envelope eviscerator extraordinaire. You get it reversed like that, and you start going to open up envelopes. Lots of control, fits in the hand grip, could make a really cool sway back design also with a nice Warncliffe design, but that's neither here nor there at the moment. It really does that quite well. So a lot of the EDC stuff that you would use, generally speaking, it does fantastically. String, no problem. It's really small. You need to make a hole, pierce, anything. Man, does it get the job done. It's relatively, I don't want to say completely inexpensive, because, well, depends on what you think that means. Because it is a cost of value, right? It is absolutely a cost of value. That is always going to be the case. There's no time it's not. And they're relatively, I hate to say it like that, but they are relatively good. If I remember right, I'm checking now. Yeah, they're close to $200. I think I got this one on sale. I was fortunate enough to get this one on sale for around $160, but generally speaking, they're really close to $200. Right, so I was lucky enough to find this one on sale. You may or may not be able to. That doesn't mean it's not bad. I believe a lot of places call this a Skinner type blade. I think of a Skinner as having the curve more straight and then curve up here, right? So when you go long on a skinning stroke, it curves around and isn't poking through the skin. So I'm not really sure where they get the Skinner part. But yeah, there's lots to have there. Is there high value? It's a titanium designer knife with a designer name. Little cool touches like anodized colored titanium, real stabilized wood inlays, an M390 blade that's got a ridiculously thin behind the edge grind. I mean, we're talking Civivi Wii or less type area here. Really, really thin. Bestech really, really went thin behind the edge on there. And I don't know if that's Ostapel or Bestech or both, but they really, really did well. I find that if you know the size of this knife and you're quite all right with it, there's value there, right? It's not necessarily about the size, unless it's my Wienar. But it's not so much about the size. It's the materials and workmanship, right? The M390 can use up grindings. The titanium has issues. There's lots and lots of stuff that can be used to value. It's not the highest value knife, but it's really not that bad. Quite honestly, it's really, really, really not that bad, right? It's expensive. It's not cheap, but it's also high quality. See, I'm going to put it in probably the 80 to 85 range. I don't mind the smallness of it. It's kind of nice because it's, even though the thickness and weight may not go as well on something like the lighter weight stuff, but for anything that's other than just ridiculously thin nylon or something like that, it's perfectly fine. And the only thing that I would actually say, I expected Bestech to do well on this. I thought it was nice looking. I really enjoyed the looks of it. Knew that the steel was good and was willing to try. I had good expectations of it. It actually exceeded my expectations, not in some of the bigger categories, but in the attention to detail. There's so many little, and I do attribute that to the designer, Ostapel. There's just lots of attention to detail, like the right size thumb studs, placed in the right area. The flat that on the blade that is hidden in the handle, but matches so wonderfully when extended to give you a nice control surface on there. It's a smaller knife, but I knew it was a 2.5. Supposedly, it's about a 2.5 inch blade from tip to sharpened edge. So I get it, right? That was something I was perfectly okay with. I knew what I was getting into. The smallness is probably the only thing that I would say, even though I knew how small it was, I was kind of surprised, but I was pleasantly surprised in how well it worked in something like a pinch grip or on the scoring style, right? Where you're getting up that curve, gives you lots of space, and you can really do some really nice stuff while controlling the tip. And that's fantastic. I did expect that from it. And quite honestly, as far as just, other than seemingly being named, I know it's named after something else, but it just can't help but remind me of a particularly rash and a Supreme Court justice I massively disagree with, especially when he pens opinions that basically go against the entire founding of the United States itself and call the British occupation something that we should maintain in our society. So, yeah, I really don't like that part, but Lito is not the same as Alito, so there we go. And that's probably about the only thing. It's actually really nice. If I had a request, make another. I don't know if this is going to sell well enough to warrant another version, but that would be my request. Make a larger version. Give me the medium size. Instead of 2.4 or 2.5 inch, give me the 3.1. Right, make this in a 3.1 inch. Give me the 7.5 and a 3.1 inch. Give me the extra hand space that matches something like the Para 3. It's something like that. That would be the only thing. Is this bad? No, this is actually a wonderful little knife that'll fit in most pockets. Can fit in a lot of fifth pockets. And can really do most EDC tasks without a problem. You don't have to worry too much about corrosion. The steel choice is good. You're going to get good long edge retention out of it. It's incredibly slicey. For EDC tasks and an occasional offhand task, it is fantastic. And that's really, I've been pleasantly surprised in my daily usage. It is so slicey. I haven't had to strop it. I haven't had to do anything to get that edge to really go there. It's incredibly even. It's been just, I got a really, really good example, or Bestech just really did a good job on this one. They've always done a good job on my other knives, but this one is particularly noteworthy on the details, which is something I like. And it being a frame lock with the inlay really prevents on such a small knife, your fingers pushing on that lock bar or anything like that. It really surprised me at how well thought out and all the attention to detail here. That exceeded my expectations. And again, the request maybe a little bigger. That's about it. Like I could see carbon fiber, some damn like Damascus and all that sort of stuff. But I really like the olive wood look on this. This light wood with the black. I think the contrast is really quite pretty. So, and this might be a little bit short compared to the others, but I'm going to review this real quick. The design, fantastic. Ostap and Bestech really did. Ostap did a great job designing it, and I would say that Bestech did a fantastic job of executing that design. So really up there. The aesthetics, I think it's nice. I think this looks like a knife. It looks like something you're going to use. You know immediately when you see it, if you are a knife person, you know that there's a lot of kind of cool things. If it was a bigger knife, you could have a bigger choil. There's lots of things you could have on it. But to bring this into a smaller package and do it so well, where I'm a large width, medium length. It fits my hand. Mine's probably about as big of a hand as you may want to have on there. Really much larger hands may find this too small. Unless you're someone who my EDC knife is small like that because I only need it for small tasks. This will work great. The mechanics are, I don't want to say flawless. Like some people don't like, the controllability of it. But the fact that you can drop it right on your thumbnail, snappy on the action, locks up good. Lockup has lots of space on the face still. I don't know if you can see that, if I can make it visible. but it locks up with probably about, 30% of the lock face. So there's plenty of room for that thing to move. The inlays really, really work to make that frame lock work. So you don't have the full, you don't have to have a liner lock or instant liners and possibly increase the weight on this thing any more than it already is. So yeah, the mechanics are great. It is well designed. The noteworthy points of this, it's small, but does very well for a small knife. So that's a noteworthy point. This is very well designed to work like a bigger knife while being a smaller knife and relatively lightweight. It's EDC, very EDC friendly. It's easy to carry, it's easy to use, has good steel, lots of stuff. Really the biggest failure, I don't want to say failure, but the biggest downside on this, because it's not a failure, it's obviously high quality materials, is that it is a little pricey. A lot of people, for the price, want to see a bigger knife. And honestly, the size is a lot less important than the actual quality and type of materials. So that's always something, quite honestly, that really does go out there. But if you come in as expecting it to just be good, be prepared to be a little bit surprised at just how good and well designed and executed and thought out this little knife is, because it is. There's lots of good aesthetic lines. I just want to point out, look how thick that wood inlay is there. Look at that. Look how thick that sucker is. That's nice. So yeah, there's a lot of value here. Its cost is high, but its value is high too, which doesn't make it just a value beast, but it doesn't make it not worth your money. And you get a lot of value for your money. So that's pretty good. And of course, like I said, the only request I have is it's kind of tiny. It's kind of a bit little. Maybe I'm saying it wrong. Maybe it should be Lito, or maybe that's just Italian or something, or whatever. Maybe it's some other language for small. Maybe that's what it is, because it is just a cool little knife that will do lots of cool little things. And it does its EDC job very, very well. Now, some of you may disagree, and that's quite all right. For anyone who hasn't noticed or isn't coming on there, you are free to disagree in the comments. Do not expect me to not answer. There's quite honestly, there's just not enough comments for me to be able to ignore that many. I try to jump in and interact with my viewers. And if you say something, I will put my opinion back. If you're the kind of person that is turned off and doesn't want to comment or anything like that because I comment back, I don't know what to tell you. I try to interact with my viewers. So, what is, I believe will be going up just before this video is a thank you, because for those who do not know or have been, as last week, these videos come out once a week. So between last week's video and this one coming out, I don't record these the day they come out. So I passed 500 subscribers. That's not a lot compared to a lot of other places, but it is the first milestone, and I cannot thank my viewers enough. The next milestone is 1,000 subscribers, which allows you to monetize on YouTube. But I really just want to thank everybody who's out there, and there's a video coming out for that. But man, this is a small knife. Not a lot of people like it, but it does very well. It outperforms for its size, and the design itself makes that size much less problematic than it might otherwise be. And that's an important thing. And that's where I'm going to leave it, you guys. I'm going to go ahead and stop that right there, because this is a good knife. I'm going to put it at about 85 on the scale here. It's pretty good. There's a lot of things that could or could not. For me, it's not as bad, but as a general review, yeah, that's about 85. The value is okay. You get a lot of value for money, but it's definitely not cheap for that value. And everything else is very well done. The only other thing, if you're not expecting it to be this small, it is this small. Okay, it is quite literally this tiny. So that's the biggest thing. So yeah, if that's not a big deal for you, this is something that's been looking. You're just wondering, is it really that good? It's really that good. It's very well done. The thick inlays are going to take abuse. Man, I am pleasantly surprised. I expected this to be good, but I'm pleasantly surprised with how good it is. So that's where I'll leave it. So, all my viewers, go ahead, take this video, watch it twice, comment as much as you like, be mindful of side effects. Remember to like and subscribe. This has been your Dose of Drew. I am said Drew, and you guys have a great rest of your night.